I had the privilege before to have a conversation on Ask Baaghil with Dalia Zaid from Egypt on brand, and we discussed how the Cairo market is and Egypt's evolution on brand. But today also there's another great opportunity that I'm speaking to Viviana. Viviana and I are also studying another initiative called the Core, where we want to empower people on brand in organizations. But here I'm going to have a deep, hard conversation with Viviana on how the current situation is on brand, since Viviana works in Europe and she's been doing this for quite a bit of time. Viviana, what sort of struggles do you face on working with people who don't understand brand?
That's the challenge. When you don't understand brand, it's very difficult to communicate the value. And the value only comes with experiencing either a crisis or a disconnection with the brand. And that's something that organizations experience all the time in the era of digital transformation. And the challenge that I have is to make organizations understand that brand is the human face of the organization.
Well, I've always addressed and criticized brands across the Middle East, and I've always claimed that 99% of so-called brands in the Middle East are commodities. A lot of organizations are delusional to the truth, if they're a brand or not. And especially when you don't have a culture within the organization, and when you have a chief executive officer who doesn't understand how brands work. How do you have a brand? You don't have a brand. Would you say that there's not only beside a misconception, there's a delusional truth to what an organization is as a brand and not a brand?
The thing is that we forget we have values, we have vision. A CEO who sets up an organization, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the US, they have something to say. Whether it's the way the product works, whether it's the way they treat their employees, that's also part of how the brand gets communicated. And you make a very good point about bringing culture in the conversation.
If we go even further, and today you have the traditional market and then you have the online market. The online market right now has been commoditized. Price is the point of reference to every e-commerce, and I've just written an article about it. And yet we hear some people say, I'm a brand, I'm a brand. You cannot be a brand if you're sharing the same values and there's no point of difference. When do you see the e-commerce market would change on brand and how?
I think whenever we're talking about online marketing, we're focusing too much on the functional aspects of the marketing and we're forgetting the human aspect.
One of the biggest challenges that I see today is somebody says marketing strategy, and then the other guy comes up and says digital marketing strategy. I mean, I'm sorry. Marketing is marketing. Whether you're going to get it offline and online is marketing. It's one single strategy that's going to contribute to both markets, even if they're separate markets. And digital supports the core marketing strategy. To me, when somebody says, I'm a digital marketing strategist and I'm a traditional marketing strategist, I mean, what is that?
That's the fundamental issue, is that everything is digital. If you have organizations that believe they need a separate digital strategy from the whole marketing strategy, they're in the wrong. Technology and the way we communicate, so whether it's social media, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a website, whether it's a blog, they're all part of a strategy. I think making a distinction in 2019 between a traditional marketing strategy and a digital marketing strategy is setting yourself up to failure.
So we've talked about digital, traditional marketing and how marketing as one single strategy contributes to everything. But we have to also admit, as much as it criticizes the Middle East, Europe has also its own issues on marketing and brand. So is the US. And it's apparent that trade marketing is still the most dominant approach, while people are calling it brand. The other day, somebody from Warner Brothers popped in and said HBO is a brand and Netflix is not a brand. Now, how he positioned and said or reflected that Netflix is not a brand, that beats me. Because Netflix has a single proposed owned business model. And they're the leader in that. And everybody has followed that. But again, we see words like this coming up from chief marketing officers and chief branding officers from multinationals. And then in my region itself, which we certainly are way behind, and I like to be honest and transparent. But I also be in the positive side that there's a great opportunity. If we all react, even you people who are watching this video, if we all react to the truth, that brands are to be handled by experts and CEOs need to be coached by experts, and chief marketing officers need to be coached by experts. The chances of succeeding on brand is pretty high. But assuming you know something and you don't know if it's right or wrong, that paves the road to failure. You agree with me, Viviana?
Absolutely.
So, Viviana and I, like I said earlier, we're working on a new initiative called The Core, and we just filmed a few of them there. And there's a lot of great minds coming along with us. And out of Ask Baaghil, which is my personal platform, I invite you guys to think of brand differently. Whether you're a corporation or a SMEs or a startup, and if you don't take brand as serious as we're taking it, and it's something very passionate to us, it's costly. Going back and fixing something constantly is costly. Falling behind on the fundamental and purpose is costly. Spending 10 to 15 years thinking something is a brand and it's not, and you're trying to build it, and it has not matured to become a brand because you missed the actual 80% of the values or 90% of the values, is costly. Key examples I've used: in Nahdi, a pharmacy in Saudi Arabia, still at 11 years, or 10 years, or 9 years, it's trying to establish its own positioning. Whether how the management thinks of it and how the public thinks of it is two different worlds. The same thing when you look at Walmart. When Walmart tried to go online because they're threatened by Amazon, and they went and built on Amazon's values, and the only thing that Walmart would do, or Best Buy would do, is that you get them Amazon's price and they'll discount you. So when you as a customer, that's not a strategy. That's an absolute tactical approach. And in fact, they're validating Amazon's strength. We need to understand how brands work. So propagating the false information, we need to understand how it works. What is the fundamental of brand? How do we build up this journey? And how does that contribute to the bottom line? How to get the return on investments? We've seen organizations start their business, and the first thing they do, whether they're launching a new brand or repositioning, they fly and parachute to an advertising agency. You spend millions, and the brand still remains the same way. It does not impact the advertising, and it doesn't impact the bottom line. It only impacts the bottom line every time this organization thinks tactical. Whether they do a price point discount, or whether they do a promotional tactical approach in one of the FMCGs in the modern trade. You cannot sustain a business by always spending its own energy on external forces. Businesses need to be today independent. And the only way they can be independent to pursue their future is to be different and own their own brand. And they stand for something with a greater purpose. Viviana, thank you so much for on Ask Baaghil, and I look forward to interview more people. It is exciting that I talk with people like Viviana, and it gives me great honor that I not only talk to her, sit next to her, and I look forward to interview more people. Please, don't think of brand just a mere perception. Brand is 90% or 100% value. Thank you.